Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, a podcast on musical encounters and life.
Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays. I'm so happy to have a guest so I don't have to talk the entire time. This is a good one. So happy to have fellow New Jerseyan Ben Vaughn on the show. Welcome, Ben.
Hello, Philadelphia.
Hello, Philadelphia. What a great thing to hear. So Ben, you're described on Wikipedia, which is such a cool thing to look people up on Wikipedia. American singer, songwriter, musician, record producer, television and film composer, and of course, the many moods of Ben Vaughn on syndicated radio. So you do a lot of things and have done a lot of things, but you're from New Jersey. And when you're from New Jersey and you go around the world, I find that you always meet people from New Jersey somehow, right?
Yeah, and they're always from a town you never heard of.
Yeah, it's like
somewhere like Belmar, but spelled wrong.
right. Well, I'm from South Jersey, so when I hear a town that I don't know, I'm like, it just must be North Jersey and be done with it.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. That's pretty much true.
So, I know you were back in the area recently. What is it about this area, just living wise, growing up, and also with music that kind of you got your roots growing up in the Philadelphia, South Jersey area? What was it musically that really influenced you?
The Geeter with the heater.
How about that?
The boss with the hot sauce, Jerry Blavat. And the reason I was just back is because I'm taking care of his archives.
Amazing.
And there were a couple more boxes left over that someone found. So I came back to look through the stuff and protect it.
It's awesome. It's amazing. And true story. And everyone's got probably a Jerry Blavat story. I was living in South Philadelphia and I ran into Jerry at a coffee shop and I said, "You DJ'd my mom and dad's prom." And he said, "If I had $1 for every time I heard that." And I'm like, exactly. So I was brought up on Jerry Blavat by my father. So I feel like my musical influences I was taught the right way. So I hear you about that. What was it about listening to the Geeter why was he so good at what he did? What was the thing, you think?
Well, it was the authenticity of his passion for music. I mean, his love for music was 100% real. He had a lot of showbiz stuff that he did,
Yeah.
that you could make fun of or whatever. But his love for music was 100% sincere. And he loved music so much, he did not want to work under a radio programmer. So he bought time. He always bought the time on stations, not on XPN, because by the time he was on XPN, they realized that they should just let that guy do whatever he wants to do. But all through the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, he would buy time so he could play the records he wanted to play.
Right.
And not follow a playlist and not have to listen to a radio programmer. So the thing about the Geeter is that he really was truly into this stuff. He was all about music.
Right.
And it came through every minute you were exposed to him. You knew this to be true. Right.
And it seems I feel that way about you listening to your show, that if Jerry Blavat is playing it, then it must be good and there must be something there, right? And I'm a big fan of yours. So when I hear something that you play, I'm like, oh, I got to check that out, or I got to check that band out. So I'm sure he introduced so many bands and so many sounds to people that would have never heard that type of music or never heard that artist, correct?
Oh, completely. He was my mentor even before I met him, like growing up, because here's a guy who figured out how to monetize his passion.
Yeah.
And he in order to and he also created a product that you had to, if you liked what he did, you had to go to him to get it. There was no other place to get what the Geeter had. And I saw that when I was growing up. Like, this guy owns his own business. He does what he's passionate about music, and he's 100% original. He has no competition.
Right.
And so that was a big inspiration for me when I started my career, is like, well, I'm just going to go the Geeter route. And whether people are buying what I do or not didn't matter to me as much as being true to myself, like the Geeter. He was a huge inspiration for not just me, but a whole lot of other people.
It's awesome.
An amazing person, an amazing energy, but also just a really great example of being yourself and going with your gut, you know?
Yeah. And also a great representative of Philadelphia and this area as well. I mean,
Oh, completely. Yeah,
I mean,
completely.
just, everyone, growing up here and obviously being down the Jersey Shore, everyone's got a Geeter story, so and also the other thing, Ben, it's generational, right? It's multiple generations of people listening to him as a DJ and listening to the music that he played, which I think is probably rare these days as well.
Oh yeah. Grandmother, daughter, granddaughter, great granddaughter are all out there doing a line dance at a Geeter dance.
So
It was
true.
incredible. It was incredible. And I really um I mean, you don't remember life without the Geeter because you're younger than me. Philadelphia without the Geeter, it's a different city now. It's a
So
different city now. He was such an important part of the city. He was like the heartbeat of it, and like in Gamble and Huff and things like
yes,
that. The Geeter
yes,
was such a major energy in that city and a personality in that city that when he died, I was there the day he died, and I remember walking around the city, and it was like the whole city knew. I could feel that the whole city was like, "Oh no,
right,
things
right.
were moving slower." Uh, it was just amazing. He was so connected to the city and to the people of Philadelphia and the Delaware Valley, or
Yes,
as he liked to say, the entire Delaware Valley.
yes, correct. And doing what, following kind of, you, like you said, he was your mentor, and doing what he did and had done for so long. What is it about music, right? Like I always think, people can be an accountant, they can be a painter, they can be a carpenter, but what is it about music that is so transforming, and just why people love it, and why did you just go down this path about music?
Well, it's the most liquid of all art forms because you can hear it in a pizzeria, you can hear it in a garage when you're getting a tire repaired, you can hear it in your car, you can hear one guy playing trumpet on a street corner. It is the most easily distributed art form there is. Film, painting, dance. You need venues, or you need like schedules, but music is always around and always has been. And I think that I mean, for me, I don't even remember getting into music because it's my original influences were doo-wop and the mashed potato and all that stuff in Philly, because I grew up in a neighborhood where doo-wop was still alive. Even after the Beatles came out, there were guys on the corner, singing four-part harmony.
Right.
And a lot of the guys in my neighborhood refused to go along with the Beatles. They were like, this is a passing thing. So I remember that as a kid, there was a little bit of a war between, like, half of the girls really dug the Beatles and the British Invasion, and the other half were like dancing to the Geeter, and the Geeter never played any of that stuff. He
Hmm.
never played the British Invasion. He was like, and in the city of Philadelphia, this is like Revolutionary War stuff, right?
Right,
But
right,
when
right,
like
right,
the Geeter, the British are coming, he goes, not on my watch, they're not.
right.
And my dances and my radio show, he never played anything from the British Invasion, and there were enough teenagers in Philadelphia that were completely okay with that, and they stuck with the Motown and the soul music and the up-tempo doo-wop and the slow dancing and everything. And I grew up loving both. I was really into the doo-wop and really into Cameo Parkway and soul music and everything, but I was also really into the British Invasion. But there was a real division in my neighborhood, and the Geeter had a huge fan base that didn't care about the Beatles at all. It was amazing. We might, Philadelphia might be the only city that took that long to fully embrace the change. I mean, there were
Right.
doo-wop groups in Philly still making records in like 66 or 67. I mean, they didn't get the memo.
Right.
They didn't get the memo.
Do you find that those groups, those doo-wop groups, and I always think about it when I hear doo-wop and oldies and the the production of those albums and the actual singing. And not to say that there's not great singers in 2024 and going to be moving forward, but just the way that those albums were produced, they feel so raw and kind of natural, and that those people had to know how to play and how to sing.
They did, and they were young. Um, think about how young those doo-wop, and a lot of them are still teenagers, like Dion and there were a million groups in Philly. I mean, they kept making records into the mid 60s. They really knew how to sing, and
Hmm.
they were kids, most of them. The backup musicians might have been seasoned studio guys or just, older guys. And by old, I mean 23. You
Right.
know, a grizzled veteran at 23. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it was all about singing, and singing was incredibly important. And it's less important now to have a really great voice, but I guess it is. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I-
Uh,
and to that point, where do you see, you know, where do you see? I agree with you. I mean, music is everywhere. I was just recently at a funeral and there was music, and then I went to a coffee shop right after. There was music, right? And I think people tend to forget how much music is always, any movie that you see, there, right? There's a soundtrack, right? So I think people don't think about how music is such an influence in your life, all the time. But where do you see music going based on the artist today, based on production value, based on how music is produced, and also based on the fact that we can carry around these little phones and access anything on the planet that is musically based, which is creating, an outlet for so many musicians to be found by people as well.
yeah, from my experience, two things are going on. There are a whole lot of new acts, and it's kind of hard to keep track of them because there are
Mm,
so, because you have DIY technology now. So
yeah,
people can make their own recordings and self-release them. That wasn't true back in the day. There was a step in between, the artist and you hearing it on the radio, and that step was a record company and a
right,
recording studio that costs money. So with new technology, people can release their own music uh, by just buying the right software and learning how to work the streaming services. So it's hard to know how much new music is out there, and it's also hard to know which of it is good. You really kind of have to really dig. And and the other thing is, I noticed that a lot of young people are really finding obscure old music now because
yeah,
that's available streaming too. And that's basically what my radio show is based on. Not all of it is obscure, but music that deserves wider recognition, I guess, would be
yeah,
a theme for my show. And I've always felt that. I've always, why wasn't this song a hit? You know, and some of the songs I play on my show, it might be the first time they've ever been played on any radio station ever.
right,
know,
right,
I've been told that by some of the artists, because I got some of the artists contact me, and I also seek out a lot of older artists, and they can't believe that I'm playing their record. Like Blue Ash, a band from Youngstown, Ohio. They put out, I think, two albums in the early 70s, and a power pop band, and I
hmm,
played one of their songs. I believe it was last week, and I got a message from the guy who was the lead singer.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's very cool, very cool.
So there's a sense of discovery now,
Yeah,
there's, of not only new music and new bands and new exciting things, but also this discovery of older music that is not the Who or Elton John or, Aretha Franklin, like artists, obscure artists. It's pretty
Right.
cool.
Well, on the flip side, someone played one of your songs on his radio program, and that was Jerry Lewis in France, right?
Oh,
Bob Dylan,
Bob Dylan, yeah.
Bob Dylan's radio program that he had. How did that feel that one of that person found one of your songs and played it on his show?
Well, that was weird on so many levels. Because it's Dylan, it's going to be weird. The funniest part about that is when I was a teenager, I had a friend named Bob West, and
Mhm.
we used to imitate Dylan in high school, and we'd see each other in the hall and go, Bob West, and he would say Ben Vaughn, and then we'd laugh.
Mhm.
So when he played me and introduced me, he sounded like Bob West imitating Dylan. He's like,
That's
here's a
that's
record by
great.
Ben Vaughn. And I was like, Bob West,
It's like life imitating art, right?
Yeah, it was very weird. It was because he sounded like a caricature of himself introducing me. It was a
Sure.
very surreal experience, but obviously I'm flattered Bob Dylan, uh,
Yes,
played one of my songs. So
it's amazing. And I mean you've done a lot of things in the industry. Um, have you ever been in a moment where you were kind of starstruck meeting someone? I know you've worked with so many bands and produced you know, music yourself with bands, but have you ever had a run-in where you're like, how did I get in this situation meeting this person?
I've had a lot of those. I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of famous people, but uh, I'm kind of I'm not easily starstruck because
Yeah.
when I was
Yeah.
18 years old, I met Mo Howard
Mm.
of the Three Stooges,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it really doesn't get any better than that. So
Yeah.
I kind of peaked at an early age.
Yes.
No,
And I'm trying to remember, was he the one from Philadelphia?
no, that's Larry Fine.
Larry, right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
There.
But
I'm getting my Three Stooges messed up, which shame on me. Um, yeah, it's interesting because I started this show during COVID because I've had some musical run-ins, and as a fan and people that I've interviewed, it's such a cool experience when the bands or musicians, artists that you get to meet are you have a great experience. It just makes them and their music sound so much sweeter. So very
if,
cool.
if they're nice to you,
Yes, if they're nice to you. That's and I think everyone has their days, and you're one of many sometimes. So I've always said I wish I could meet Bob. That's my dream meet, Bob Dylan, but I know it might be tough.
yeah, I haven't met him yet either, and he is a guy I would definitely like to meet. Um,
Yeah.
I did hang out with Waylon Jennings quite a bit. That was a thrill for me. I couldn't believe he was calling me at home and leaving messages on my voicemail.
It's a
I played it for everyone.
right. Yeah,
Waylon Jennings is calling me. Check this out.
yeah. I always remember and I always remember this about music and artists. I was lucky enough I saw Ben Harper one night, yeah, and then the next day I was sitting in Rittenhouse Park and Ben Harper comes walking up and asked me where the hotel was. And we just started chatting and we ended up sitting for 40 minutes in Rittenhouse Square talking. And I remember him talking about, I told him, listen, I played your music in my mom's basement. And he was like, well, I played Beatles music in my mom's basement. And he went on to explain to me that there's chains of, or Bruce Springsteen talks about the chain of music. And it was just very eye-opening and humbling to hear an artist talk about how they look up to people and and you talking about Jerry Blavat, like it's just this long chain of musical history and musical expertise, I think, that people follow, and they're just we're just all people following that musical chain. And it was very eye-opening to hear Ben Harper talking about some of the influences in his life with music, and that he was in his mom's basement playing Beatles songs, and I was in my mom's basement playing his songs. So do you get that sense in your musical experience that you find yourself just like, oh, why am I playing this artist? Or I remember when I heard that album.
Oh, totally, totally. No one is not influenced, right?
Yeah.
Like Johnny Cash, a big influence on him was Sister Rosetta Tharpe. He loved her and the Louvin brothers. And when he would talk about that stuff, he wasn't Johnny Cash anymore. He was like a kid with his ear stuck next to the radio,
Right.
We all have that. And for me, it was the Geeter and all the doo-wop stuff and everything was my first, the first light bulb moment for me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your point about the amount of music going on out there, there's also not only the amount of music, but this thing called radio, right? The radio is still the thing, and I find it fascinating that a lot of younger people are finding music through gaming, through television shows, through movies, and they're finding a lot of my nieces or nephews might hear a Billy Joel song, but the way they found a Billy Joel song is different than the way we found the Billy Joel song. And I just think it's fascinating the amount of areas that people can hear and engage with music and technology. And my question is, will the radio ever die? Do you think it's still the thing that people tune into and kind of gravitate to when it comes to music?
It still seems to be healthy,
Yeah.
terrestrial radio, as they call it in the business,
Yeah.
still seems to be healthy. And I don't know what would officially kill it unless cars no longer had radios.
Yeah.
But people also listen to radio online now on their phones. So like when I'm on WXPN, I'm not sure how many people are listening to an actual radio in their house or
Yeah.
how many people are listening to a radio in their car. I always envision people driving when they're listening to my show. And I'm just hoping that I don't scare them with a song that makes them crash into a tree.
Right. Right.
But
Well,
I also noticed some people are, walking through Rittenhouse Square, listening to my show on their phone at xpn.org,
yes.
so I don't know, or some app that I'm not a modern technology guy so much. So there's probably an app or two. And my show is also available as a podcast.
I was going to say, it's now you don't have to be at that certain moment in time, right? You can listen to it on your own schedule with the podcast.
Yeah, I get a lot of messages from binge listeners. They listen to like 4 or 5 shows in a row, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
To be able to have it on the go.
Yeah.
That's
Do you
that.
do you find that your fans, like when you do play those obscure bands, do you find that like, because I know I do. I'm like, what did he play? What is that band? And then you go down the rabbit hole, whether it's YouTube or Spotify, and you start to find more music from that band. And I think it's such a cool experience because it's discovery. I mean, I'm a big Black Crowes fan. I once heard Chris Robinson talking about Eddie Lang, and I'm like, well, Eddie Lang's a Philadelphia guy. Eddie Lang plays guitar, and it's like, wow, why haven't I been listening to Eddie Lang? And do you find that your fans kind of go down that rabbit hole when you get messages?
Definitely, I get messages, really beautiful ones too, like really heartfelt, like thank you so much for turning me on to whoever it is.
Yeah.
I'm now a huge fan. I can't believe I never knew this artist before. I get a lot of really nice complimentary. Every now and then I'll get someone who wants to compete with me, They
Yeah.
say, well, no, why I have his second album. You didn't play anything from that. Like they're, like, and all I can think of is you should have your own show, man.
Right.
Because
Right.
you sound like you know what you're talking about. But
Right. Just do it.
exactly. What are you telling?
Why are
What are
you
you yelling?
telling me? Do it. Do
Exactly. What
it.
are you yelling at me for?
Yeah. Well,
No,
Ben,
but
this this has been great, and I don't want to take up too much your time, but I just have one last question. What
Sure.
what do you what's your, you've done all these things. What's kind of your greatest musical achievement? What do you think you're most proud at that you've accomplished through the years?
Oh, well, what I'm most proud of, uh, probably the thing that I'm most proud of is when I was doing the music for that 70s show, I was able to revive a Big Star song,
Mm,
and Alex Chilton was able to buy a house with the money that came in from that.
wow, that's amazing.
That made me feel really, really good because
Yeah.
that first Big Star album is so good, and it fell through the cracks when it came out. And for that song to finally be heard by people and have it change someone's life financially was it really felt good that my instincts led to something that
Personal. Yeah.
yeah, and that rewarding for the audience too, because they get to hear that song. Alex got to buy a house. It's all good, right?
Yeah, that's
You
that's
know?
amazing. That is
Yeah, that
so cool.
yeah, I'm really, really that's the thing that I think that makes me smile the most about whatever I've accomplished. That one feels the best, you know.
Awesome. Well, Ben Vaughn from New Jersey, proud New Jersey. And so I appreciate your time so much. And this was a great chat. So uh, come back to Philly and Jersey whenever you can, and we'll have you on again for sure.
Are you eventually going to expand and have rock and roll Saturday, rock and roll Sunday, rock and roll Monday?
As I get older, it's only rock and roll Friday. I can only go out one night, Ben. So it's slowing down, and I'm gonna hit 50. So I see these concerts starting earlier and earlier, these artists. So they're getting the hint too.
I know, I know. I when I get offers to play a show, they go, "Well, you go on at 6:30." I'm like, "What? What happened to us?"
What happened to rock and roll? It's rock and roll happy hour, right?
Exactly.
So thanks so much, Ben.
You are welcome. I enjoyed talking to you. It was great.
Thanks so much.